I'm from Florida. Like, that was about as smooth a voting process as I've ever seen in my life. By the way, Trump won going away. There's nothing to fix there. He knows there's nothing to fix there. But you look at every Republican poll, and, like, what are the most important things? Like, 1, stop alien invasions. 2, voting fraud. Like, it's just every poll, whatever, crime, number 1, voting fraud, number 2. It's ridiculous. It's gotten into their heads. And, again, it's fueled by conspiracy theories from, like, cults in China that have websites that stupid people in America are following.
And if you put the screws to a politician about why they're heading down this path, they say things like, a lot of people have questions about this. People in my district have questions. Well, they have questions because you are feeding the narrative and the conspiracy theories that bubble up and are amplified in the media bubble that so many of those voters are looking at. And to Jonathan's point, Mike, Donald, the predicate for these laws that we're seeing in states is this lie. The bottom line is that Donald Trump, you know, he didn't create a lot of these lies, but he certainly was the loudest voice on some of them. And he, up to yesterday, he was on TV yesterday saying, no, I do not concede this election. A lot of people have a lot of questions. So the foundation of what we're talking about in terms of reform rests on a lie.
Yeah, Willie, and you are correct. I mean, the former president did not create these divisions, but he certainly enhanced them. And he basically woke up every day trying to further divide this country. We've been talking about the damage being done to this country most of the morning. We do it most every morning because the damage is so extensive, but a lot of it is invisible. We began talking about the healthcare workers an hour ago in Texas who refused to get vaccinated because the vaccine was politicized. Wearing a mask was politicized. And now we listen to Senator Cornyn on the introduction to this segment speaking. He had the ghostly vibe, the rhetoric that you would hear from John Stennis or Richard Russell in the early 1960s over what? The basic American right to vote. And the Republican answer to voting in this country is to either suppress it through various state legislatures or to make it so arduous, so difficult, that the simplest of democratic methods, getting up and going to vote on Election Day, is now a contentious issue. That's damage being done to institutions, damage being done to America. And I don't think, as much as we talk about it, we don't pay enough attention to it or talk about it enough because the damage is already extensive.
Again, I want to underline the real crisis here. The real crisis with a lot of these Republican pieces of legislation that's passing. It's not at the front end. It's not actually getting out to vote. Like the Georgia bill, actually, if you look at some measurements that Nate Cohn tweeted out, like, it's easier to vote now in Georgia than it was 4 years ago. Just is. The problem is on the backside of the process where the state legislatures can come in. And remember the guy in Michigan, the one Republican in Michigan that said, I just have to do my job because that's my job? Like, he's out now, right? And you think about the Secretary of State in Georgia. They've decided. They passed legislation. They can walk over whoever the Secretary of State is. This is what Democrats need to start focusing on and stop talking about, oh, it's harder to vote than it was in 1873. No, it's not. It's not even harder to vote than it was in 2016. It's the back end of it all, where Republican state legislatures want to be able to step in and disallow votes that they want to disallow in Fulton County or Maricopa County or in Milwaukee County or in Wayne County. That's the crisis. And Casey, Mike was talking about Donald Trump didn't make the situation or made the situation worse, but he didn't invent it. But he invented the big lie. And he started it a year ago. We did these Jimmy Kimmel week in a day a year ago in COVID history. And Donald Trump, this time last year, started with voting fraud. mailing in voting fraud. It's all about voting fraud. He was hammering away at this nonstop, and he did it deliberately because he thought he was going to lose, and he wanted to happen exactly what's happened.
And it's the same strategy he uses in terms of the press, where he would say, well, I'm going to tell you that the news isn't true so that when they write something bad about me, you won't believe them. It's the same thing with the voting. He's laid that groundwork, said, there's going to be voter fraud, there's going to be voter fraud, there's going to be voter fraud. So if he lost, he could say, well, I only lost because of fraud.
Has Ron DeSantis said where the voting fraud was?
Not that I can
Has Brian Kemp said where the voting fraud is?
We never found out.
Has the governor of Arizona, Ducey, said where the voting fraud? There's no voting fraud, right?
Not enough to overturn an election, no. And that's the point.
You know who else said that? Rudy Giuliani in federal court. Said there was no widespread voter fraud. None of Trump's lawyers would say that in federal court in front of a federal judge because it'd be sanctioned.